Like I could beat my own ass at any point. I'm just saying, I'm a
Okay.
good 180 pounds. Like I'm eating right. I'm going to the gym every day. I'm feeling good. How are you feeling? How have you been spending your
Oh,
off season
well, guess
time?
what, man? I feel the exact same way. I'm definitely the strongest I've ever been. I've been hitting the gym every single day, and I hope that once people see me on camera, they could really see the difference. Just like you, I've been sticking to the grind every single day. I watch your Instagram videos, your little dashes that you like to post, and your gas is well deserved, man. You've been on the come up, but it's a nice little friendly competition we all have with each other, and I think it's only going to benefit us all in the long run.
Yeah, man. At the last event, Revan put me in a headlock and tried to like hip toss me or something. And I was just like, oh, I gotta get swole now. I can't let this guy beat me up before all these people. So
Facts.
anyway, after we walked off the CDWL champ stage of him beating me up, we decided let's put together this video and talk about the last week of Call of Duty Esports. So I'm gonna go ahead and flash up on screen the results. These are both the seedings, and the results of the 2K for every region. This is on the COD competitive subreddit. Great place, should definitely check it out. The link to the subreddit is always in the description of my videos. So you can see that first and foremost, you have North America with 100 Thieves being up top and number 1, and G2 Esports being down last. And our placings here are actually going to be Optic Gaming and Orglis, which is Spacely's roster, coming up in our top 2. And our first seed that I had mentioned just behind them, they were actually taken down by Spacely's team in 3rd to 4th place. Now, we also have the EU seeds and the EU results here at Reserve, as you can see up top, with Team Reciprocity, 2 of the bigger names that we saw coming out of the European organization. Some other players that should stand out to you would be No Org, who has a 3rd seed. This is Mad Cat's team. Mad Cat, PD, Dave, Josh, and Alex. Now, as far as our results, though, it's going to be none of those teams that I just named. It's going to be
Results.
Quicker's team. He's going to be teaming alongside Nolson, Dylan, Weeman, and Nevo. So, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't know if it's Nevo. I don't want to find out. Like, I refuse to say this name right here. And if you guys watching the video, like, I've been commentating over this guy for years, and I still just, man, I think I say it different every single time I try to read it. Neil is what we're going to go with. It could also be Nile. And I've heard European players say it a million times too, but I forget every time. It's so bad.
Pretty sure it's Nile.
Pretty sure it's Nile, right? Okay, cool.
No.
Because I've said it both ways many times throughout commentating. It's awful. Anyway, so these are back on subject. These are your placings. As you can see, Quicker's team is going to find themselves in 1st place. Surprisingly, we end up seeing Red Reserve down here towards the top 8, alongside Team Reciprocity, and Mad Cat's team also running themselves out of the top 8.
All right, so look, even though it's the first 2K of the season, right? I'm not worried about these placings from Red Reserve or Reciprocity. As you were talking about, these are the noticeable European teams. And the reason why I'm not worried about them is because I'm pretty sure both these teams are moving to North America, right? So they're shopping around for team houses. I actually saw a video that the Reciprocity owner put out looking at houses in Las Vegas. So eventually these guys are going to be getting the best practice effort. Keep in mind, still early in the game. We're all technically on early release still. So there's going to be a lot for these guys to learn, and just getting those reps against the best talent in the world is only going to make them better. Second takeaway from the EU 2K for me is I love seeing all these new names. Nevo on that DQN team with Nolson and Quicker. Dylan as well. Like, he made his come up in the last chance qualifier for Europe last year in the World War II. So I love seeing all these new names. I love seeing the depth coming out of the European region. I just hope these guys stick together, going into the first event. They have all this practice under their belt, and let's see if they can make some noise.
Right, and so we'll get into the APAC region in just a second. We're mostly going to be talking about North America, so I kind of skipped over them a bit because they're going to be a good chunk of the next
Yeah, there's a lot
video.
to talk about there.
a whole lot went down on social media. But with the European guys, like you said, at least 2 of these teams are going to be flying over to North America to be competing there, right? I know we just saw some of the players announcing today. I think it was Tommy saying he has a P1 visa until 2021. Different things like that are going to make a huge difference. These guys moving over to Europe, I think that I mean, this goes without saying, like, this isn't some crazy hot take. This is where they're going to get the best practice possible. They're going to be playing against some of the best teams that have consistently been at the top throughout their careers. So I'm looking forward to see the move, man. I'm looking forward to see how that changes the overall atmosphere and environment here in North America. Like, what if we see, when we see some roster shakeups, what if we see some new EU players coming over to North American rosters because of this?
Yeah, I was about to bring up the exact same point. Not only that, maybe some of these players that you see on Reserve or even on Reciprocity in the future, they could find their way onto some North American teams. They've already shown that they're willing to give it their all just by moving over to the States to play Call of Duty. They have their visa. They have everything they need. So once we look ahead towards that first WrestleMania, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see some of these big names make their way onto some top-tier NA teams.
Yeah, and that'd be exciting to see for sure. I think that everyone gets excited when we see mixed nationality teams in Call of Duty esports because it's such a normal thing in other esports titles, but in COD, like, we've either hasn't been feasible or it hasn't been possible within the rules of our league, right? So Just interesting stuff. I think that we could definitely see some things like that shake up come, around the first, second event of the year. That'd be exciting. Once someone just ends up breaking through and just proving themselves, like, out of nowhere. I mean, we saw Methods really come out of his shell last year, like something like that with one of these players. So moving down the list, though, we're going to have our APAC region now. This is the top 8 seeds. You can see Mind Freak at the top, as you could usually expect. This is going to be their first sort of, not major tournament, but major online tournament, I guess we should say, without Dens, who has now come over to compete in the States. But our top 8 placings are actually going to be Tainted Minds in first place, Nimble, Damage, Swifty, Swift Azor, and Setsi. And in second place, we have Mind Freak, which is Buzzo, Shox, and Fida, Luca, and Excite. I promise I can read, guys. But that's our top 2 for the APAC region. I mean, Revan, that really just kind of seems like more the same, at least in the top 2 spot, right? I mean, we're seeing a lot of the best talent in Australia, all within the top 4, really mushed together in between like 2 or 3 teams. It's just this top heavy as usual, right?
Yeah, I mean, outside the first 2 teams, there's not much to talk about when it comes down to the talent in ANZ region. The only other team you could look at outside of Mind Freak and Tainted Minds is maybe that ARM squad with Killer Pie, Eminence, and Zeus. Those are some names that we've seen from APAC, but I'm glad that Tainted Minds were able to come out strong in the first 2K1. It's going to set the tone in the region for the rest of the game. These guys have been going at it back and forth for so long. I mean, you think back to World War II's Pro League, like we hyped up Tainted Minds so much. We saw the improvement that they made once they were getting that good practice. So it's good to see them come out and improve upon that, plus not making any roster changes. They have that core 4 still with them with Nimble, Damage, Swifty, and Swift Azor. And I'm going to say, I think these guys might come out on top of the APAC region all year long. I mean, from talking to them over in the Pro League, they seem to have such a good work ethic. They have good heads on their shoulders, and I'm excited to see what this squad's going to do in this title.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure these 2Ks are very important for a lot of the players and a lot of the teams in these regions right now, not just because of seeding, but also because they want to have a good showing and get some funding, get an organization to back them to come over to North America to compete in Vegas and compete in future events. I think that we see, only 3 of the top 8 teams in the APAC region are backed by organizations. And in the top 8 of the 2K for Europe, all top 4 teams are orgless, and 5 out of the top 8 teams are orgless, which is just really strange to see, right? Especially when you compare it to North America for Call of Duty Esports. Not strange, but just something to consider, right? Something to think about.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're an organization out there looking for some solid teams, well, pick your choice. These are all guys who have a good start early to the game, which is so crucial. Whenever we're talking about a new Call of Duty title, I wouldn't be shocked to see these guys get signed pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. If you're looking for a team, hop on the COD Gamepedia, take a look at these results, and do what you got to do. So we did say we would revisit North America, and we have to, especially with Optic's performance of coming in first place. These guys went 27-0 in the first 2K. And the only thing that should surprise you about that, the main thing that should not surprise you about that, is Optic doing very well in the early 2Ks of a COD title. This is the same thing that we've seen for so many years from, some of the core players on this roster. Of course, things have shuffled around a bit with the team over the years, but since like AW, these guys have just been monsters in the beginning of the game.
Oh, without a doubt. And look, the 2 biggest takeaways for me for this Optic Gaming squad is that it was looking like Karma and Scump were both really enjoying playing the game right now. I was tuning into their streams. The viewership was absolutely massive. I know we might touch on that later, but these guys were having so much fun playing together. I mean, even when things weren't going their way, like they understood it and, they battled through whatever the game threw at them. That's going to be the big thing for me. I mean, we always talked about Scump last year with the practice he was getting, and he didn't seem like he was enjoying the game to his fullest. Seems like his attitude has taken a complete 180 in the opposite direction, and same could be said about Karma.
Yeah, and I think one thing I really like when watching Optic and watching their streams is hearing Teep chime in between games. I love the conversation that they have. I love that it's very, you might hear them complain a little bit, whatever, but then all of that is out the window when it's game time. Teep speaks, they all have a conversation, they work on something to improve, they're all together, very constructive, and still, it's a very positive, happy environment. Like, they might get at each other every now and then. Sometimes Krim might flip on Scump, but really, that's just like that competitive nature. It's just that passion and drive coming out, I think. So, I think, like you said, it's really good just that the vibes are there, the success so far is there. Of course, we're still very early into the game, and it's a 2K, but still just getting started off on the right foot, that impression is a big deal for them.
Yeah, and it's already changed the minds of a lot of people in the community. I saw some comments, some people swapping back to the optic player, getting behind their team. But going back to what you were saying about TP, it's that championship mindset he just brings to this squad. And that's what a good coach can do, especially when we're talking about TJ. This is a guy who caught some flack last year because, sometimes in like pool play matches or like early in the tournament, he won't give it his all, right? And he won't perform like we would see him in the very last game in like the championship match of a tournament. So I think Teep's going to be the guy to help out TJ a little bit on this team and also keep these guys focused on the goal at hand, which is to return to winning form.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point to bring out. I mean, you said that about TJ Halley. You could bring up the same thing about Dashi. Maybe not so much letting it affect his individual performance, or maybe the way that he interacts with teammates. We've heard players like Temp in general in the past kind of talk about how his focus just isn't all really there, and he's really easy to like turtle up when given criticism and things like that. I'm not really hearing a whole lot of that with Optic, at least so far. Of course, this is still the very early stages of the game. Let's give it some time, but he seems like an awesome fit, and I love hearing his conversation with the rest of the guys as well.
Yeah, Bruce, I love watching Dashy play. Guy goes off with the sniper. But another team I want to talk about real quickly in this North American 2K is 100 Thieves. This is a team that coming into this tournament, people had them, not even really listed as like one of the top teams just based off their performances in scrims. And I think they started to turn some heads. I saw Kenny was going on some massive sprees, and in their first quarterfinal matchup, I saw Ferrer was also having a big impact. And those are some crucial guys on this 100 Thieves lineup. I think as long as Enable stays consistent and brings that typical in-game leadership that he brings to the table, I think these guys are going to be fine. And this is a good moment for them. One, because like I was saying, scrims weren't going too well for them. So just to see some success in a tournament environment against some of the other top teams, that's got to start to build the confidence for this team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you take a look at 100 Thieves, they also have some of the better AR players that we've seen for a long time, right? Just in Slasher and Octane alone. It's still a star-studded lineup all around. We got some great players on there, but they do have a recipe for success. They just need to find that kind of chemistry and bring it together. I'm really looking forward to seeing 100 Thieves play and improve throughout this game. What are some of the biggest things that stand out to you about them? You said you wanted to see Enable's consistency. Is there any other name that comes up to your mind that you want to see?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the assault rifles from this team, because in this game you have to be quick and you have to be mobile with the assault rifle. And if you think back to games past, Octane and Slasher, they're typically like your statue style AR players, but they played to a good pace along with their teammates. In the respawn game modes, they had a good grasp on control as well from some of the games I saw from them. I think the big thing is as long as they could stay mobile and put themselves in power positions and rotate along with their teams, I think they're going to be just fine. It feels like this team just has way too much talent to fail, right? They're just spread across the board. They're good at every single role. If it winds up being like an AR-heavy game, which it pretty much is, like Pharaoh and Enable, they've flexed in the past. If the subs get a little bit of a tweak, well, they've ran subs as well. So you have a good mix of all roles. And like you were saying, the vibes are great on this team, right? I mean, you heard it with Kenny throughout the year on that T-Caliber squad. Whatever team he's going to be on, there are going to be some good vibes there. And I'm glad that 100 Thieves is off to a strong start.
Yeah, so 100 Thieves, a team to keep an eye out for sure. We still need to talk about the other team, though, that actually took them down, which is going to be Spacely's team. Major Maniac, Havoc, Nagafin, Mox, all 5 of these guys play second, taking down Splice and 100 Thieves on the way. And to remind you, 100 Thieves is the first seed coming into this 2K, of course, basing this on previous pro points from the previous game. So Spacely, man, he's feeling hot right now. I think he's someone that just gets this fire behind him when he's doubted and just shocks so many people with some crazy, like, out of left field performance. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is going to be the Justice roster that we saw way back when in, like, AW. We saw him do it again and elevate just this last year at Champs. I mean, there are so many different instances I'm afraid to even name anymore because I know I'm going to miss some.
I know just about all of them. Don't worry. This is a guy, Spacely. Back in 2011, he was playing. The guy was like 12 years old at the time. Starts his own team, starts his own organization under Juke, and starts making a run at those events so early on in his career. And just like you were saying, he needed something to spark that fire, right? Something to bring him back in that competitive spirit. And for me, it all started when he was coaching that LG squad, right? He coaches them. He starts watching their VOD, and he starts to gain a different understanding of the game. And I was reading some of his tweets from back during that time, and he's like, wow, I wish I started doing this earlier in my career. I've learned so much about the game. What does he do after that, Fox? He leaves Luminosity as a coach. His team qualifies for champs, and then they eliminate them from the tournament, right? And so what way to build competitive fire? And now he's carrying it through here. So Spacey, for me, I feel like this is going to be this guy's year. Just like you're saying, he's been doubted for so long, and this is a guy, like, he's placed top 4 at multiple events, right? He's done it in the past, and I think this is going to be a great year for him.
Yeah, I just wonder how far he's going to take these four guys with him. We haven't really seen him team with some of these players for extended periods of time. I mean, some of them have been given criticism of their own
Hmm.
for, whether it's a lack of
Like
focus or
Havoc.
like Havoc, right? That's the kind of the player I was leaning towards there. Like, is that someone that I feel like his attitude, at least from what we've seen from him in the past in Infinite Warfare, things could definitely be different now, especially, with him still competing and growing as a person and player. Is that something that's going to rub Spacely the wrong way? I feel like any sense of complacency or just like no sense of urgency in your career at this point is something that would rub him the wrong way. And Nagafin as well.
Yeah, as well as Mox. I mean, this
Oh
is a
yeah.
guy like back in Black Ops 3 when he made his debut. What was it on that Cloud9 roster? I thought this guy was going to shoot for the stars, but he's kind of fallen back a bit. So those four players that we just mentioned, like the fire better be lit for them. And just like you're saying, there's no place for complacency on this team and on this roster. And I'm looking at Spacely. For me, he's the captain of the squad. For me, he's going to be like more their leader. He's been around the block more times than everybody else on this team. So he's got to whip these guys into shape and he's got to keep them focused. Just like we were mentioning about Optic, their goal at hand is to return to championship form. For these guys, Orglets, whatever team, whatever organization they're eventually going to sign with, they need to maintain this level of fire that they have right now throughout the entire year. I could definitely see these guys making some waves.
I'm really curious to see how much that whole regimen at Ghost Gaming has paid off to change Spacely and Mox's attitude for the game. I'm really curious to see like how much of that they bring here, because meeting with Mox after his time with Ghost Gaming and everything, just hearing him talk and the way that he carried himself, it was so different from what we saw from Mox in the couple months prior. So I don't know. I'm just curious to see like his growth as a player. I'd love to talk to him again and kind of see where this team's headspace is at, especially after a finish like this. Can they keep this up? They want to keep this from being a one-off. They got to keep learning the game. This team isn't the first team you go to mentally when you think of players that are really good at learning new games, right? You look at United with Clayster, you look at Envy with Aches, you look at Optic with Crimsix and everybody and so many people on that roster, right? You don't really think of the minds on this team, but you still have to respect what Spacely and Mox have been able to do, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what they can all contribute to this team. They all have great things they can put forth to this team, I think.
Oh, without a doubt. And look, the beauty of our esport is that we play a new title every single year. So the opportunity is there for players like Spacely, Major Maniac, Havoc, these guys to make a wave early on. If you want it more, you're going to put in the time, you're going to put in the effort, and you're going to show it with your work ethic. And I think these guys have a good start to the year. Just like we were saying, you got to roll with the momentum now. Keep carrying it forward week to week.
Right. So, guys, that about does it for the 2K. Were there any specific? Oh no, actually, no. One thing we need to talk about here, I think, is probably one of the more controversial matchups that we saw. It's kind of if you're an E United fan, it's a bit of an asterisk on Optic Gaming's undefeated run throughout the 2K, right? So there was a controversial map between Optic and E United, right? And there was some issue. Apparently, this was, I think, what was it, map one? I think it was map one, right? In the
Um,
series.
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I was kind of jumping back and forth while this was going on between all the streams.
Right, right. Okay, well, it was a hard point. For most of the game, they were playing just fine. Towards the later stages, apparently Arcides was having some connectivity issues, and then he ended up dropping out of the game, just disconnecting. United, they were hosting the lobby. They didn't end the game, and at the end of the game, when of course Optic came back because they were playing 5 versus 4, I guess United was expecting a replay. But they weren't expecting Optic to give them the replay. So apparently, this is just according to, what I've been able to read and what I was able to see on stream. Apparently, there was some, a little bit of bad mouthing on stream, and
Okay.
Optic just decided to take it away. And they were like, no, we're just going to go on to the next map. We took it. It's ours, right? So a bit of frustration a bit of controversy coming from between these two guys. Were you able to follow any of this action at all, Revan?
Yeah, and now that you bring it up, I know a little bit what you're talking about. And I've experienced something similar in my playing career at the Call of Duty Championship qualifiers back in Ghosts. We had a controller issue at the start of a map, and I ended the game. Optic Gaming had the chance to forfeit my team and go up 2 on the series. They didn't. Instead, they allowed us to replay, thankfully to them. And I think this is, almost like a similar situation, right? At the end of the day, these guys are players, right? They have that competitive integrity, but it sounded like Optic, they were more than down for the replay until they heard that United were bad-mouthing them, right? And then after that, it's like, okay, if these guys are going to act like this, then we'll just take the map dub. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's only one map, and who knows how that might have changed the mindset on the side of United. But these guys are veterans. They should have been able to bounce back. These things happen in online games across the board. You just have to roll with the punches and move on from it.
Yeah, for sure. And I understand if this is the exact story of what happened, I kind of understand where Optic will be coming from in a way. It's like, yeah, they go into like, yeah, sure, we'll do a replay. Like, more than likely do a replay. Like, why not? And then they hear whatever was said about them, and they change their mind because they're like, we were about to do you a favor, like do you a solid. You know what I mean? Like, be courteous. And now what? No, okay, we'll just move on then. So I kind of see where they're coming from. Again, I don't know exactly what was said. A good bit of this is hearsay, but it's believable, right? People get frustrated in things in the heat of the moment, and
especially with online Call of Duty, right?
Online anything, online gaming in general. Like, it's just got this. I mean, I could show you the hole in the wall if I could move my webcam without it falling out of place. So let's go ahead and move on to the next bit of information. This is something that's caused quite a bit of a stir in the community as well. Lots of discussion, lots of arguing, lots of great feedback and not so great feedback from the pro players and fans alike. It's the CWL rule set discussion. So I'm going to be flashing up some things on screen here for you. Definitely make sure you check it out. We saw, I did a video about the CWL rule set. If you haven't already seen it, this isn't the video for you. You might want to just go back and check that out. We're just going to assume that you already know what the rules are by now. I will link that video if you want to go ahead and see a quick run through of all the rules and everything and my thoughts on them. But this is a post made on the COD Competitive subreddit. I couldn't find the exact link to it, but the first thing that stands out to me about this rule set being announced is that Treyarch has confirmed that esports only specialist tweaks will be coming after Vegas. And this is just what I have on screen is actually just a discussion on the COD Competitive subreddit on like how they would change things and just propose ideas. But I think that that's such an awesome thing from Treyarch, is that they're willing to make changes that they know are necessary for us, but maybe not so necessary for the rest of the game. Right. I just really appreciate that level of cooperation from them. What do you think?
Yeah. Plus, they do it without, removing core elements from the game. Right. It's tough to make the argument for Treyarch to flat out ban an entire specialist from the game. I mean, sure, they did it with Nomad, but once you start stacking on more and more, like, you start to run out of options, kind of like what we saw in Infinite Warfare, right? Infinity Ward, they were more than happy to tune things specifically for us in their CWL settings, and it's great to see Treyarch is following in the same footsteps. I think I read the same article you did. I'm pretty sure these changes are going to be coming after Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. So we will see one full event with a specialist at, like, full strength,
Full strength Torque is a scary specialist for sure. That 9-bang is vicious, man. Ajax as well, big threats for sure. But as far as your suggestions, would you have any kind of things that you would like to see changed about our current specialists? Like, just maybe one or two things that stand out to you right away?
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of jumping on board the 9-bang train, right? Just tweak that a little bit or increase the resistance that Tac Mask has. Another thing I've been seeing people talk about a lot is Torque, both with his razor wire as well as the barricade. I think small tweaks you can make is like, decreasing the health on the barricade and make it easier to take down. I'm sorry, on the razor wire. And then for the barricade, like, make it take more damage from behind. So like the front part where the microwave is, if you're beating it down from the back or shooting it from the back, just make it take down, a little bit more damage, or just decrease the amount of length it stays on the field. I mean, just being able to lock down a lane and just kind of walk away and have the barricade do all the work for you, I think is not the most competitive thing ever, but they're going to be fun ways. And look, throughout Black Ops 3, people had the same kind of thoughts about the specialists, right? But look at how many exciting moments were provided by the weapons or the abilities, right? And I think we're in store for a lot of that in Black Ops 4. So it's all about just finding the right knobs to twist and the right tunings, and there's no better team out there than Treyarch to do it.
For sure. I just think that I think it's really good that they recognize some of the things might not be super healthy for competitive play, and it's awesome to see that we have them willing to respond to feedback and make changes accordingly. One thing that that kind of concerned me, I think the map was I'm so bad with map names, right, when games come out, but I'm gonna say Seaside Hardpoint. It was the middle hill where there are vents on both sides. Is that Seaside, or am I
that's Arsenal?
Arsenal, thank you. Okay. And both mid doors, the player on the opposing
you lock them up with razor wire, man.
It was E United versus someone, and they had razor wired both doorways. Clay's sitting there just firing away into one of them. A whole mag of his swordfish, I think he had, just wasn't doing anything. And he's getting taken down from behind by, I think it was gravity spikes or something. And it's just, he was just like, oh, sick. It was the funniest reaction.
Yeah, you put razor wire on both doors, then you put the barricade up top in the mid window, and it's like they can't even get into the hard point. I'm sure we're going to see many more kind of situations like that throughout the year.
Yeah, mid is closed. Like, that is, you cannot come in. It's ridiculous. But I do have a few proposed changes. We talked about these before, like privately, Revan. Some things I'd love to see in the game, man. So give Torque a smoke grenade. Give somebody a smoke grenade. Something like, is it Torque Ajax that has the 9-bang? Give him the smoke grenade, right? I love to see that.
Even Recon, instead of the center dart, he could use the smoke grenade as well. Pair it with Vision Pulse. I think that's a good combo.
For sure. I think that would be a really nice addition to the game. Change things up in Search and Destroy by cutting off some of these lanes. Maybe open up different routes for some machine gun players or even people to grappling hook, which doesn't really seem to be super weak right now at all. But still, just like, it adds more creativity to the game, I think. I mean, there are thermals in the game, right? So I just think
there's smokes in Blackout, so it's in the code somewhere.
Somewhere in there. Not going to pretend to know how to put it over to multiplayer, but it's somewhere in the game at some point, right? Another thing I'd like, this is a suggestion that I actually saw on Reddit or Twitter. I can't remember who said it, but this is not my own personal idea. Is giving Prophet an EMP instead of the Seeker drone. At the moment, the Seeker drone is kind of just this, especially in 1v1s, you just throw it out there and it finds the player for you. Like, there's really the most work that you have to do is pressing R2. If they get tagged by it and they don't hit square in that quick time event fast enough, then they're stunned by it and it's just really disruptive. So I'd love to see him given an EMP. That would then give us more counterplay to some of the other equipment and specialist things in the game too. So
you can make it like a super strong EMP too. Have it charge up like the Ajax does with his 9-bang and toss it out. Maybe that could be something that takes down a shield or takes down some of the other big equipment or even some streaks. I like it.
Yeah, lots of counterplay that could be added into the game here. Should they make some? I was going to say minor changes, but I don't think there's some minor changes. Pretty big changes to the way some of these specialists work. So it might be a big ask, but it's definitely a good one, I think. So. So as far as some of the other things in the rule set, Revan, is there anything else that stands out to you?
Well, yeah, I have the rules here. I think not talking like specifically rules, but the map set in general. We have a big map set right now, man. And this is, I guess a little bit typical at the start of the year. You just pick out maps, you look at their layout. Okay, does this look like it could be a competitive map? Maybe. Let's start on the list, have them test it. I'm sure that we're going to see that map kind of pool narrow down as the year progresses forward. I mean, there are some maps like Fire Rain, Search and Destroy for me. Great for 4v4 back, and now with 5v5 with the added specialists, I feel like it's a little bit too narrow of a map. Like, you're kind of forced to just 5-stack a bomb site, and then you get trapped in, like if you lose your guy watching the flank. So I definitely expect to see the map set get trimmed down, but for as much complaining as I saw about the rules, there are still some big wins in here. One, like getting a revenge voice and battle chatter disabled. I mean, you remember back in Ghost where you had guys calling out callouts across the map? Like, you wouldn't even see him, but for some reason the character calls out, so you're like, oh, there's a guy in top here. I heard your guy call him out. Or your guy
stuck around for way too long.
Exactly. So that's a huge win to get in this rule set, disabling the battle chatter. There are other things that I'm sure will get tweaked along the way, stuff like they've already talked about the Hellion Salvo, the rocket launcher, right? Seems a little bit weird to people now that aerial score streaks are allowed when you can't use the rocket launcher, but come along with the esports tuning, just like we were talking about the specialists. Same is going to be done to the rocket launcher. It's going to do a lot less damage to players, so that's going to be a direct counter to any aerial score streaks. That'll be much less of a problem as the year goes on. And look, people have to keep in mind, it's V1, Fox. It's the first version of the rule set. Like, obviously things are going to be a little bit bare, so things could be tested, and Treyarch loves to try to balance things around competitive, so it's up to these pro players to provide data, provide arguments to the developers that they could either remove it from the rule set or make the appropriate tweaks for it to be viable again.
Right. It's always important to remember that when you remove something from the game, that's going to affect the balance of something else. So we start the game kind of bare bones, just really banning out the absolute necessities that we know are not going to be great for the game, battle chatter, things like that, right? And then kind of testing the area, or testing the waters and seeing what is and what isn't good. Because you got to remember, all these pro players, they are learning this game. Treyarch, the developers who made the game, are probably still learning new things about the game themselves as everyone else is starting to play it, right? A game is very different when you have like a developer team playing it versus millions and millions of people on a daily basis. So you got to understand that the first rule set that we see is never ever the final one. I don't think anyone expected it to be a home run the first time out.
And I don't think it ever will be a home run on the first go around, right? It's a new game.
It's unrealistic.
People have to test. People have to experiment with the game. And it's going to take time, and I think eventually we're going to get to a spot where we have a really good rule set. Will it be in time for Vegas? Maybe, maybe not, but we'll get there. Yeah. We've worked with a lot less, back in the day. I mean, think back to all the different V1 rules we had. I mean, in Call of Duty 4, we played with RPGs, we played with time 3 stuns in a game where there wasn't even any tac mask. And Modern Warfare 2, we played with akimbo Model 18s, and Black Ops 2, we played with akimbo pistols all the way up until champs. So you could look back at any Call of Duty game and think, okay, maybe that should have been removed. Maybe this should have been removed. But that's not like how things go. You have to make these arguments, and you have to prove that these things don't belong in a competitive environment. And if you can't make that argument, then you're wrong.
I'm about to go gatekeeping mode here. I don't want to hear anyone complain about the 9-bang that has not experienced triple stuns in COD 4. I don't want to hear a word.
You couldn't move. You couldn't move up the map. Search was awful.
Right, man. And you could throw them so fast too, so they could just make sure you were dead by the time they were able to take care of you.
Plus, if a frag grenade landed within 5 feet of you, you were dead.
Done. No flak jacket. What's that? That's not invented yet. This is 2007. Get back in your time machine.
Players are blessed with the type of equipment and the perks that they have now. Sure, right. Even though tac mask is only resistance to some of these tacticals and the 9-bang, I'm sure that'll get tweaked as the year goes on.
Revan, we
didn't have that luxury back in the day.
We sound like old men right now.
Back
in my day, we used to run up and down hills to get to school, chasing after the bus. We
didn't have no scuff controller back in my day. You had to jump manually.
No keyboard and mouse back in my day either. Oh my god, man, 2007. Anyway, back to 2018. Let's go ahead and get into some of this feedback. Aches goes on Twitter and he actually discusses this is sort of on topic of what you were talking about with the maps. His bit of feedback is that we remove unlimited sprint. I'm going to throw that tweet up on screen for you right here, guys. He's not a fan of unlimited sprint. He feels like having it be removed from the game would slow the game down in a great way, and I can't help but agree. I definitely would like that. I wonder what that would do to our necessity of having respawn times in some of our game modes, though. I wonder how that might affect just the rest of the timings in the game. That's definitely a concern that you need to think of, but. I'm still liking the idea. I definitely think that something can be done to lower the movement speed of these players, because you're just everywhere with that SOG, lightweight dexterity, unlimited sprint. You're gone.
I think it could also have a pretty positive effect on search and destroy as well. Just being able to slow things down and tactically think about the game. I think it's certainly something that's missing now. But also, how much can we take away from that, because it's only the first couple weeks of the game and players haven't really figured out optimal routes. They haven't really developed optimal strats for some of these maps. So part of me thinks that there's still some to get figured out, but if it's Ake saying it, I'm gonna trust him. He's been playing Call of Duty for such a long time now, and he's been the best for a long time too. So he knows what it's like to be on top and bottom. And if he says or gives a suggestion about a Call of Duty game, I'm gonna take that at face value. I think it's certainly something worth looking into. Maybe Treyarch could add something like a setting to disable sprint, so if it doesn't have a positive impact, you can always just flip it back on. But either way, could be something worth looking into.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that Aches has been easily the most vocal among a lot of the pro players. Parasite as well, on his feedback and opinions in the game and everything like that. And it seems like incessant crying. It seems like whining. But I think it's important to understand that Aches doesn't say these things without thinking about them. He's not just spewing out the first thing that comes to his mind. This is something that's very important to him, and he's putting thought into solutions to these problems before he shares them. And I think that it can come across the wrong way. His delivery is not great, but there's still some content within what he's saying a lot of the time.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of people need to keep in mind that at the end of the day, this is their job, so it does have a pretty big impact on, potentially their income and how much they're going to earn at this point in the game, or they're trying to make it better for later on in the year. But also on the other side of the table, you have these developers who constructed the game and created it, sometimes with competitive balance in mind. So just to, go out on, day 1, day 2 and say, oh, let's strip this from the game. Let's take that from the game. It's a little bit kind of insensitive to how much work these developers have actually put into the game. So there's a nice balance that certainly both sides can find. I mean, I'm sure once, like I've been saying about a lot of this stuff, eventually we're going to get there, right? It's still so early on, and they've already made one big weapon patch already, and there's probably more to come.
Oh, there's absolutely more to come. There's always some big weapon patch in the beginning of a COD title. It's just a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God that gun is gone. The MSBS from Ghost is the first one that comes to my mind. I'm trying to think of some other just ridiculously oppressive weapons that we experienced in the early stages of a game.
I mean, think about the FAL in Black Ops 2.
Oh, of course.
How strong that was with auto select. You didn't even have to tap your trigger. You just put rapid fire on it or auto fire.
Select fire, yeah.
Select fire, yeah. It just destroyed everything. So
Yeah.
that was a big win back in the day when we were able to get that out of the rule set, and we face similar challenges today.
So a bit of feedback that we saw on some of the ban list and restrictions in Call of Duty Esports is going to come from Classic of Luminosity Gaming. He says, "How is Gung Ho banned and Grip 2 isn't?" Grip 2, for those of you guys who don't know, is an attachment that makes your gun, for just to put it simply, stupid accurate. Like, this is a very powerful attachment. You're seeing lots of the players run it at the moment on ICRs, and there's actually a good discussion here between Aches and Parasite about this attachment. It's always them that have really good in-depth discussions on Twitter.
I like that they're not afraid to speak their mind, though.
Yeah, always. But they're discussing the presence of the grip and comparing it to Gung Ho, and Aches says that it's far and away the best perk in the game, and that's why it's gone. So I mean, Revan, do you have any sort of a take on Grip 2 or Gung Ho at the moment?
Well, I'm pretty sure that Grip 2 actually already got tweaked a little bit in that weapon patch, right? They added a little bit of a flinch to kind of combat some of the feedback that they've gotten from the pro players, so they're already on top of that. In terms of Gung Ho, I'm going to be completely honest, that's not even a perk I use. I mean, for the most part, when you see pro players like make classes in this game, they're using 1, maybe 2 perks total, so that could also be something that in the future, like Treyarch could tweak a perk. I'm not sure how difficult of a thing that is to do, but the thing is, like, whenever we're talking about a rule set and something gets banned, very rarely do you see it get added back. So even if Gung Ho ever gets to a situation where the players think it's competitively viable, it might not even get back into the rule set.
Yeah, for sure. And on the subject of perks, you were mentioning some of the pro players only running like 1 or 2 perks, sometimes 3, but it's very much depends, right? At the moment, because they're stacking their primary weapon. Not even a lot of people are running the pistols in this game because the ARs are so strong right now. But one thing that I did miss, with us of course not having a proper like perk system in the last year, or like our usual pick 10 perk system, I should say, not proper. Is seeing the players get creative and put so much more thought into their classes. I love seeing little things like, all right, we need someone
engineer.
To run. Yeah, I was just gonna say, run engineer so that you can see these trophies through the wall. You know where they're setting up and which control point they're going to be holding or which S&D bomb site they're going to be at. Don't run tac mask on the first round or so of an S&D because they're not even going to have their stuns up yet. Like, run lightweight dexterity instead so you can get to that choke point faster. Just different things like that. I'm really enjoying seeing just the creativity provided by the perk system and the balance that Treyarch has brought to the game, and just the different roles that they've brought to the game with their decisions.
Oh, completely agree. It's something that we loved when it was first introduced to Call of Duty back in Black Ops 2. It was almost like a revolutionary system at the time. I think we've all kind of grown to love it, and I'm excited just as much as you are to see how these classes are going to change over time. I love the diversity of the perks. Let's hope we get there with the weapons as well and the attachments. I think there's always, whenever I think back to Black Ops 2, I always think that it's a game that was never fully figured out. I think we go back and play it now and there'll be new things figured out, over time. So I hope we kind of find that same status within Black Ops 4 as the year goes on.
Yeah, that would definitely be real fun, especially with the level of competition the Call of Duty World League has brought. Globally, I would love to see us all go back to Black Ops 2. With the structure and everything, it'd be nice. Moving on to our next point, though, this is going to be our final bit of feedback coming from some of the pro players. This is, again, a discussion where, surprise, Aches and Parasite are involved, but it's in response mainly to a tweet from Blast, where he says, "Variety creates inconsistency." So I look at this tweet, and I think, I give him the benefit of the doubt immediately. He means variety for the sake of variety creates inconsistency and it's not good. Okay, sure, I can agree with that. I can understand that. That's what I thought at first, but then this is the player from G2, of course, G2 Esports. He doubles down on this and says that all these CODs have been situational. Adding more guns is going to make it inconsistent. And I'm really not liking where the rest of this conversation is going from his perspective. You see Parasite kind of battling him and saying, no, dude, this isn't the right way to look at it. I'm just kind of I just feel like that's a really rash blanket statement to make about variety in a first-person shooter. What do you think, Revan?
Sure, I could somewhat agree with that there. Variety for the sake of variety definitely creates inconsistencies, but where variety starts to shine in a competitive environment is when we continue the conversation about all the counters, right? So I run something, and in order for you to counter that, you got to put something else on your class. That's going to create variety. Variety with guns, that's not really something I even care too much about. For the most part in competitive, we've only had people use the same 2-3 guns. I think this game, the gun balance is going to get to a spot where we can maybe see that open up to more guns, but people are going to look to find that all-purpose rifle. It's in every single Call of Duty, right? You think back to like the ICR, the FAMAS, guns that perform well across all situations, and then adding in more. I'm not sure if that would create inconsistency, but variety when it comes down to things like tacticals, things like perks, things like variety on how you create your class, just like we were talking about. I think that's the kind of variety we want to strive for, especially in competitive Call of Duty, because to me, that's what helps drive the meta, and that's what helps drive real strategy being brought to the table.
For sure. And I think that variety and just, your creative class system in general is a really good thing. My biggest thing with guns is that, yeah, sure, we're going to see most of the players sort of hover around 2 and 3 different guns, but when it becomes that like 4 and 5 number, how cool is that, right? Just to see certain players that sort of brand themselves with these weapons. We're all going to remember how strong, Killa was with the AN-94, Stainville, like some of these names just come up about these weapons. Nameless being one of the stronger aggressive ARs. The Man of War was in the game in Black Ops 3 for him, right? Like just anything like that. Just seeing these different players specialize, not pun not intended, in certain things is so cool. Like I just think it's so I think it's really good. It gives teams sort of secret weapons, players that are really good with certain weapons in certain moments, like Octane with the ICR in Black Ops 3, Zero with every AR in the game in Black Ops 3. Right, that's just something that's so interesting and gives these guys different ways to go about playing through a match that creates a healthier, diverse, competitive environment where you can get creative, and the thinkers can beat out players that just kind of go into a game with muscle memory.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point here, Fox. Variety kind of drives this creativity, and done properly in a competitive environment, it drives for some really creative strategies. I mean, I hate to keep kind of bringing up, Black Ops 2, but some strategies that I'll never forget is like on Standoff Search and Destroy with Impact, and how Parasite would throw the EMPs along the white fence and try to clear out the trophies. And then people started saving trophies for later in the round. So he would save his EMPs, and just like this back and forth, I think is what the variety that the developers bring here. That's what they're kind of going for. They're not really doing variety just for the sake of variety, just to try to get different things out there. They want to do it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes, they might miss the mark, but that's because nobody's perfect, and it's a big game with a lot of people that play it.
And they're not making it just for us.
Right. We're a good small portion of the millions and millions of people that touch this game. So it's important to remember that some of the things even the developers might know when they make it might not have a place in the competitive environment. Like, I'm sure they're just as sensible as we are with many things. So that about does it for most of the news in the last week. At the moment, it's a lot of the teams preparing with the new rule set, hopping in this first 2K, learning what they can from this tournament, this highly competitive environment, up until we get into Vegas in a couple of months in December. Should be an exciting event to watch. I'm going to be excited to be a part of it all. I'll have content here on my channel for it as well. I know Revan is going to be starting up quite a bit of YouTube content this season as well. So, Revan, if you want to go ahead and plug your channels, let everybody check out what you got going on. I'd love to maybe put something together with you again in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm entirely open to it. If you're interested in following what I'm going to be doing for this upcoming year, you could follow my Twitch. It's just twitch.tv/Revan, or you can check out my YouTube. It's RevanEXC. Check it out. I'm sure you've probably watched my call out video once or twice, so make your way back there and hit the subscribe button. Real quick, I'd like to thank you again for having me on. It's been such a blast being able to talk about Call of Duty in such an open format like this, and something I've truly missed over the years. So thanks for having me on, Fox.
Yeah, of course. So guys, also, if you want to check out any of my content on my Instagram, I just started trying to get that popping over the last couple months or so. I'm putting up a lot of my fitness related stuff on there, a lot of my speed and strength goals and accomplishments. I just started kickboxing a couple months ago, so you'll see some good 1-2 punch combos to use on your monitor when you get joked online, different things like that. So if you want to check out any of those things, the information is all on screen and the links are in the description. All the links to what I used in this video are also going to be in the description, so make sure you check those out as well. And I'll see you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Join us next week for the COD Feed Weekly, where I'll again wrap up the last week of Call of Duty Esports news.